Namaste. Welcome to the lecture series on the subject Basic Thermodynamics, Module 1, Fundamental Concepts and Definitions. This is lecture number 4. Myself, Dr. N. Satish Kumar, Associate Professor of Mechanical Engineering, Canara Engineering College, Benjanapadav. The contents for this lectures are thermodynamic equilibrium, diathermal wall, adiabatic wall, zeroth law of thermodynamics, thermometer and thermometric property, temperature scales, thermometers. So thermodynamic equilibrium. So a system is in thermodynamic equilibrium if it is not capable of finite spontaneous change to another state. So if the system has to be called as in thermodynamic equilibrium, it should not change its state to another state easily. So that is the meaning of the finite spontaneous change to another state. Now in order to meet the thermodynamic equilibrium condition, a system should meet three equilibrium conditions. One is the thermal equilibrium. When a system is in contact with its surroundings across a diathermal wall, and if there is no spontaneous change in any of the properties of the system is said to exist in thermal equilibrium with its surroundings. So here the system under consideration should have a diathermal wall. So diathermal wall is the one through which heat can easily flow. Now if there is no spontaneous change in any of the properties of the system, then we call it as the system existing in thermal equilibrium with the surroundings. Now though there is a diathermal wall, if there is no heat transfer between the system and the surroundings or from surroundings to the system, then there will not be any spontaneous change in the properties of the system. So here condition is both the system as well as the surrounding should have the same temperature. Next is the mechanical equilibrium. A system is said to be in mechanical equilibrium when there is no unbalanced force acting on any part of the system or the system as a whole. Right? So here mechanical. So mechanical means it comes with respect to the force. So here system, within the system, so there should not be any unbalanced force, and also between the system and the surroundings there should not be any unbalanced force, or there should not be any unbalanced force acting on the system. So then we call it as the system is in mechanical equilibrium. Now coming to the last condition, that is the chemical equilibrium. A system is said to be in chemical equilibrium when there is no chemical reaction within the system, and also there is no movement of any chemical constant from one part of the system to the other. So here I hope you can imagine the system, right? So here if it has to be in the chemical equilibrium, there is no chemical reaction within the system. So within this, because the chemical reactions may liberate or absorb heat energy. So when there is some change in heat energy content of the system, so automatically the property values also changes. So that is why the condition is there is no chemical reaction within the system, and also there is no movement of any chemical constant from one part of the system to the other. So there means it should be homogeneous system, chemically homogeneous. So there should not be any movement of any chemical constant. So when all these three conditions are met, so then we say the system is in thermodynamic equilibrium. That means it should have thermal equilibrium, it should have mechanical equilibrium, and also it should have chemical equilibrium. Now coming to the diathermal wall and the adiabatic wall, the envelope or boundary or surface enclosing a system may be a conductor or insulator. This is the boundary which separates the system and the surroundings. So it may be a conductor or it may be insulator. If this contacting wall or surface is a conductor, so conductor means the one which allows the heat to pass through it. So then we call such wall as the diathermal wall. If the conducting wall is an insulator which does not allow the heat to flow across the boundary, then it is called the adiabatic wall. So here the conducting wall is an insulator, so it doesn't allow the heat to flow across the boundary, right? Now coming to the zeroth law of thermodynamics, when two systems have thermal equilibrium with a third system, then they in turn have thermal equilibrium with each other. You see, very easy to understand the definition. When two systems have thermal equilibrium with a third system. Now let me explain this here. Now let me take system A is in thermal equilibrium with system B. Thermal equilibrium with system B. That means A and B are in thermal equilibrium. Both are at same temperature. Similarly, C and B are also in thermal equilibrium with each other. That is what two systems have thermal equilibrium with the third system. The two systems are A and C, and they are having thermal equilibrium with system B. Then they in turn have thermal equilibrium with each other. That means he says A and C are also in thermal equilibrium, right? So that is quite obvious, to easy to understand, that if two bodies are in thermal equilibrium or at constant temperature with the third body, then those two bodies are also should be in thermal equilibrium with each other. Coming to the next topic, thermometer and thermometric property. So you know that thermometer is a device which is mainly used to measure the temperature of any substance. Now what is the basis for the measurement of temperature? So just now you studied the zeroth law of thermodynamics, where it says that if two bodies are in thermal equilibrium with the third body, then those two bodies are also in thermal equilibrium with each other. Now this is the basis for the measurement of temperature. Here the third body in the zeroth law is a thermometer. This third body is considered, or it's developed as a thermometer, a device used to measure the temperature of various substances. Now these thermometers, so they make use of a fluid called as thermometric fluid with certain property, and this property is made use of to measure the temperature. Now suppose if you take alcohol, mercury in glass thermometer, sorry. So alcohol or mercury in glass thermometer, you know that it has got a bulb wherein you have the alcohol or mercury, and the property of this mercury is when its temperature changes or it increases, it expands, its volume increases. Now suppose this mercury or alcohol is made to expand through a tube of uniform cross sectional area, so then the only variable is the length, because volume is changing, but volume is nothing but area into length. You know, area is constant, so then volume is be directly proportional to length, right? So here the increase in length of the mercury in the column is directly proportional to the temperature, because volume change is directly proportional to temperature. So by knowing the height of the mercury column in the tube, very easily you can find out the temperature. So that is called as the property here. Okay. So length is the thermometric property of this alcohol or the mercury. Now similarly, we have electrical resistance thermometer, where resistance is the thermometric property, because you know that when a material is heated, its electrical resistance changes. So the change in resistance is directly linked to the current, the temperature of the wire. So as the temperature increases, the resistance also varies. If the resistance is varied, the current flowing through that is also varied. So you can calibrate a ammeter or voltmeter to measure the temperature directly. Similarly, you have thermocouple, where two dissimilar metals are joined together, and one end is maintained at a cold condition and other end is maintained or used to or dipped in the substance of which the temperature has to be measured. Then you know that electromotive force is generated through that thermocouple. Now here the electromotive force is the thermometric property of this thermocouple. So by calibrating in terms of electromotive force, so you can measure or you can use this thermocouple to measure the temperature. Similarly, you have constant volume gas thermometer where pressure is the variable or thermometric property, because volume is kept constant, so automatically pressure increases. If it is heated, a gas, if it is heated at constant volume, its pressure increases. Similarly, if the gas is heated at its constant pressure, its volume increases. So volume, you can make use of it as a thermometric property to measure the temperature. Similarly, for pyrometers, which is based on the radiation, so the intensity of radiation is the thermometric property. So with this, what I would like to conclude is, if you want to develop any thermometer, you should use a thermometric fluid or a thermometric property, right? So you should use a parameter which is called as a thermometric property, which changes with the change in temperature. Hence the name thermometric property, which changes with temperature. It need not be fluid, it can be material also, solid also, okay? Because fluid is always in the sense that it is gas or liquid. But here, for example, the electrical resistance, it is a solid material. Even thermocouple, it is solid material, right? So here, so that property you have to make use of to develop the thermometer. Okay, temperature scale. So as we know that temperature is a function of resistance or EMF, pressure, volume, radiation, intensity, right? In case of electrical resistance thermometer, thermocouple, okay, whatever we studied in the previous slide. So we studied the various thermometric properties, and we know that these properties are function of temperature. So with the change in temperature, these properties change. Now, in establishing a temperature scale, we need a relationship between temperature and this thermometric property. So that is very, very important. If you want to develop a temperature scale to measure the temperature, you have to develop a relationship between this temperature and thermometric property, because just now you studied that with the change in temperature, the thermometric property of the fluid also changes. Now, the relationship between this thermometric property and the temperature T may be of different types. The correlations may be of different types. What are they? Directly proportional. So temperature is equal to Ax. A is a constant of proportionality. X is a thermometric property. So temperature T is directly proportional to thermometric property X, and when equated it becomes constant of proportionality into X. Then linear relationship. T is equal to Ax plus B, where A and B are the constants to be determined for that temperature scale. Then you can have the quadratic relation, T is equal to Ax square plus beta x plus gamma. Similarly, you can have the polynomial relation also between the temperature and the thermometric property. Now, so any temperature scale or thermometer will have a definite relationship between the thermometric property and the temperature measured by that instrument. Okay, the temperature of minus 273 degrees Celsius in Celsius scale and minus 460 degree Fahrenheit in case of Fahrenheit scale is called as absolute zero temperature. Now you should know what is absolute zero. Now in most of the thermometers which are used to measure the temperature, now okay, before that let me tell you how a temperature scale is constructed. So here you should have two fixed points as the reference points, and you have to assign some values for this. Now in order to make you understand easily, let me take the example of a glass bulb thermometer. All of you are familiar with this, you might have used in various labs and all. Now if you observe that thermometer, there are two fixed points. One is at 0 and one is at 100. I am talking about centigrade scale, normal thermometer. What is this 0 degree Celsius? Which is being taken as a reference as 0 degree Celsius? That you should know. Here, this centigrade scale uses freezing point of water as the reference. So one of the fixed points is the freezing point of water and it is marked as 0. So try to understand this. Freezing point of water is marked as 0. It's considered as 0 degrees Celsius. Then the boiling point of water is marked as 100 degrees Celsius. So you have two fixed points, freezing point of water and the boiling point of water, and you assign two values. One is 0 degrees Celsius for freezing point and 100 degrees Celsius for the steam point or the boiling point of water. Now the distance between, because when you keep it in ice, so mercury column, wherever the height is, that you have to mark it as 0. Then you dip it in boiling water, automatically the mercury in the tube rises, and where it stops, that point you should mark it as 100, and that length you have to divide into 100 equal parts. That's called as calibration. So as to measure in 100 equal parts means each marking is 1 degree. Suppose if you divide into 200 equal parts, then each division will be 0.5 degree. So this is how the temperature scale is constructed. Now the question is the 0 degree Celsius is the minimum possible temperature of this world? No, because you know that temperature can be even minus also in the deep freezer units or refrigerator units. So we go below 0 degree Celsius. So that's a clear indication that the minimum temperature of this world is not 0 degree Celsius. There is a temperature below that also. So what is that? -1, minus up, where you can go? So you can go up to -273 degrees Celsius in the Celsius scale. Below that, no that doesn't matter itself doesn't exist. It is proved. So the -273 degrees Celsius is the minimum possible temperature of this world. That is in Celsius scale. Right? Now it will be -460 degree Fahrenheit in case of Fahrenheit scale. Because they are the two different scales, the fixed points are given different values, because Fahrenheit scale is generally used for the measurement of the human body temperature, wherein the normal human body temperature is marked as 98 degree Fahrenheit. So accordingly the scale changes, right? So this temperature, the minimum temperature possible in the world, is called as absolute zero. Now that means this -273 degrees Celsius should be taken as the 0 to find out the absolute temperature. The temperature measured from this 0 is called as the absolute temperature. So what are they? The absolute temperature in Celsius scale is called as degree Kelvin. Now whenever we substitute the temperature for any thermodynamic or any other calculations, we never substitute in Celsius. All of you know this. But we substitute in Kelvin, degree Kelvin. Why should we substitute it in degree Kelvin? Why not in Celsius? Because Celsius, as I told you earlier, it takes the freezing point and the steam point as the reference, and it doesn't give the absolute temperature. So absolute temperature means what? It should be measured from this 0, which is 0 -273 is the 0. So now if your thermometer is showing 0 degree Celsius means below that 273 degree temperature is there. So that -273 should be taken as 0 degree Kelvin. So that is the meaning of absolute temperatures in Celsius scale. So that is why any temperature measured by a thermometer, so it is excluding that 273 from 0 to -273. That 273 is excluded. So that is why you have to add 273. Suppose if you are measuring the temperature of a substance and it shows 10 degree, that means it is 273 plus 10, because the 10 degree is measured from 0. What is 0? That is not absolute 0. Absolute 0 is below that, -273 below. So that length you have to add. So 273 plus 10, so it is 283. So this is the meaning of the absolute 0, and absolute scale of absolute temperature in Celsius scale is called as the Kelvin. So degree Kelvin is equal to degree Celsius plus 273.15. That is a precise value, 273.15. Similarly, absolute temperature in Fahrenheit scale is called as degree Rankine. So degree Rankine is equal to degree Fahrenheit plus 459.67. That is also precise value. Generally we take it as 460 and 273. Okay. So the temperature scales in the 2-unit system are also related by T degree Rankine is equal to 1.8 T degree Kelvin. You can also develop the relationship between Rankine and Kelvin, and you can find it, you'll get it as T degree Rankine is equal to 1.8 T degree Kelvin. Similarly, T degree Fahrenheit is equal to 1.8 T degree Celsius plus 32. So that is how the correlations are developed between various temperature scales. Okay, next we will discuss few thermometers. First one is mercury in glass thermometer. So I believe I need not explain much about this. All of you are very familiar with this. You know that it has a glass bulb and a glass tube, and mercury or alcohol or any liquid for that matter will be filled in this bulb, and it will be evacuated tube. That means there is no air or any gas, so it is easy mercury or any liquid while expand it can flow through the tube. And you know that this has two graduations, 0 and 100. So 0 degree, as I told earlier, it is corresponding to the freezing point of water, and 100 degrees Celsius is corresponding to the steam point of water. Now when you want to measure the temperature of any substance, so you have to dip this bulb in the substance, and automatically you can see the rise in level in the mercury in the tube. That is because of the thermometric property expansion. So expansion is nothing but increase in volume, but your tube area is constant, so your length becomes the property. So the length of the liquid in the glass tube will be directly proportional to the temperature. So this is how a mercury or liquid in glass thermometer works. Coming to the next one, so it is a constant volume gas thermometer. So here if you see this diagram, you can see there is a bulb is there in which a gas is filled, and this beaker is nothing but the substance of which you have to measure the temperature. So now this glass bulb with the gas is dipped in this liquid, right? Now here there is now the volume up to here in this bulb, from here to here including this bulb, it will be constant volume here. So constant volume of the gas is filled in that bulb. Then you have mercury here, and this mercury in this tube is connected through a flexible tube to this column also. So this tube can be lowered or raised or moved up and down, right, to make or regulate the level of mercury in this tube. So now what happens is, when you dip this gas bulb in a substance of which the temperature is to be measured, so because of the heat, the gas in the bulb expands. So the gas expands, so this gas expansion of the gas causes this mercury to be displaced. So mercury gets displaced, maybe it comes some to this level, right? Now what you have to do is, you have to move this limb, right, or this tube up and down, so that up or down, so that this shows 0. The mercury level comes back to 0 in this tube. Then you have to note down what is the mercury level in this limb here. This vertical distance you have to note down, and this height will be directly proportional to the temperature, or it should be calibrated here. This is the temperature scale is there, so you can read directly from here. So this should be calibrated to read the temperature directly from the that scale. So this is how a constant volume gas thermometer works. Similarly, you have a constant pressure gas thermometer where pressure has to be maintained properly. So here, to maintain the volume constant, what you did, though the mercury has displaced till here, so you made this tube to up and down, so that volume comes here. So expanded volume is again fitted in the same volume here, from here to here. That means volume remains constant, pressure increases. So that pressure is pushing the or causing this mercury level to be raised in this limb. So here pressure is causing the height, volume is constant. Whereas in case of constant pressure thermometer, the pressure has to be maintained constant. That means there will be a manometer, two limbs of that, the mercury should be at the same level. So then the pressure is constant and volume is changed. So change in volume, or if it is a constant area tube, then it will be length again. So that will be calibrated to measure the temperature. So this is how constant volume gas thermometer and the constant gas thermometer work. Now this is the explanation for the constant volume gas thermometer, so you can just go through that. So with this I conclude the lecture number 4 of this module 1, and with this I also conclude the theory portion of this module 1. So in the lecture number 5 and 6, so I will be solving few problems. For more solved problems you can refer my notes also. Thank you.